Are you a patient or an impatient person? Or could there possibly be something in between, right? So, patience is accepting or tolerating a delay, a trouble, suffering without getting angry or upset, right? It's this ability to remain calm in the face of adversity, right? So, we're patient. Where impatience is the tendency to have or show it's like this tendency to be quickly irritated or provoked, right? Like we tend to lean towards impatience when we are activated or bothered by something, right? So I've been doing a lot of thinking about this because recently I've had to say to myself, you need to practice more patience. And then that made me go, okay, well, does that mean I'm impatient? Right? If I'm not practicing patience, am I an impatient person? And the word to be impatient, we just think of it as really not flattering, right? Like you're just maybe irrational or you're off the you fly off the handle or you just have no tolerance for anything or anybody. And now I'm going to be honest, that was really what was happening when I was like, "Oh my gosh, I need to practice more patience." Is just being for me, it was at the end of my rope on a certain day, and I let go of the rope. It was just gone, right? Like, enough is enough is enough. I've lost my patience, so to say. So I started thinking about it and I was like, okay, well, if I am not patient, then I'm impatient. And now I'm classifying myself as one or the other. And if I'm impatient, do I hold this possibility to learn to become patient? If I am patient, do I lose that? Could I lose that patience and become impatient? Right. So I did some research and thinking and talking with my coaches about it and like what is this? And ultimately I discovered it's a practice and that it's not one or the other. It's this continuum of a way of being, right? So we've got that you're um impatient and you are just intolerant to the extreme on one end of this continuum. And then we have patience actually in the middle of this continuum. And then we have disengaged and like unattached and just uninterested, right? On the other. Almost in when we think of a depressive state where you're just all bets are off. It's just unengaged, disengaged, and um there's a word I can't think of it, but just feeling just it begins with an A. I can't think of it. Put it in the comments if you think of the word that I'm thinking of. So we've had this continuum where actually that balance is patience. And we can fluctuate on like any continuum, you land at different points based on what's going on. Like how I explained that particular day, I just was at the end of my rope. I mean, I was at the end of the continuum. Like, I mean, maybe I was holding on to the end with like death grips, but it wasn't my most flattering moment. I'll tell you that. So, through my research, I want to share some things with you because it helped me and working with my coaches came up with a plan for myself, right? So, in some of the research that I did, there's an article published in the Journal of Positive Psychology 2012. And the research suggests that in general, there's three different scenarios, three different times that we have the opportunity to practice impatience or patience, right? So, this ability to remain calm, of being patient in a situation. And these three times are hardships, which are things in life, losing a job, moving, sickness, divorce, upset, hardships, right? And our second scenario or time are their relationships when we're in a conflict with somebody else, a struggle, working with other humans tends to provoke either patience or impatience in people, right? Or somewhere on that continuum. And I find it very relatable that it's this continuum because my tolerance, my level, my place on this continuum really plays a role with who I'm talking to, right? So that's the second time that patience comes up, or this ability to practice patience would be in our relationships. And now the third time in the third scenario, it's daily hassles. And this is where I find myself, this is where I find my clients find themselves landing, falling towards that impatience. It's daily hassles. It's the time sucks. It's the things in the present moment that are pulling us around, right? So we've got maybe something spilled, and now you've got to stop and clean it up and pick up whatever, maybe glass broke, all of that, right? A tangled necklace. You're getting ready to go out and you pull out your necklace and it's full of knots. And now it's like, I got to either undo it or find a different one. And maybe that seems like, even as I'm saying it, it seems like maybe that's a ridiculous thing to become impatient about. But it's that present moment where we have to choose, right? Are we going to let this frustrate us? Are we going to let it irritate us quickly sometimes? Or are we going to find a way to then fall in that middle of the continuum with patience, right? I mean, it's one thing to be frustrated and then another to like really let it ruin the situation, right? Um Impatience for me, when I look back on being a mom, I often became impatient with, um, and it happens a lot now too, conversations. When I feel like conversations aren't, um, I don't know, keeping me attentive. So that's boring, but it's on me because I'm lacking practicing listening skills, practicing the empathy of a conversation, right? So this was huge for me. I'm a coach, and when I'm with my clients, I mean, I'm all in. That is, I am right on it. And then I found that I was becoming impatient having conversations with my husband or my kids. And that's not who I wanted to be. So I had to pull back and say, what is causing this? And for me, it was these daily hassles, this boring conversation. I remember when the kids were little, I could imaginary play. My good Lord have mercy. I was hanging on over here at the end of the continuum. Or Play-Doh. Play-Doh always set me over the edge. Like could not play Play-Doh. Play-Doh is still today. It's an activator. I don't want to play it. So we're learning about ourselves. So I was learning that I was in that moment having these conversations that I was then starting to become impatient, and what that looked like is I would try to finish people's like their sentences. They would start to say something and I would jump and say, I know what you're going to say, right? Or if somebody's thinking about something and they might like rattle off a few different parts, and like I'm like, get to the point, like enough already, right? It was because I was living in either the past or the future. I wasn't embracing that present moment. So for me, these three places that this opportunity of patience or impatience shows up out of hardship, relationship, or daily hassles. I struggle with daily hassles because I wasn't being mindful. And I'm a master mindful practitioner. So it was a wake up call for me to do this, to sit down and say, okay, how am I going to bring more mindfulness into my moments? I practice mindfulness daily. I have times that I practice mindfulness. What was it getting me? In the moment, I need my mindfulness. So it's not, we need to just remember that continuum, right? Because that continuum is contingent upon factors of health, factors of time, factors of environment. What the continuum reminds me of is Don Miguel Ruiz's in his Four Agreements is to always try your best and know that your best will change from day to day. That's what the continuum reminds me of. Where we land is always to be trying our best, but some days my best might be towards impatience, right? I just might have less of a tolerance due to having a headache or being overloaded with work or whatever, right? And then other days I my best, and if I know it, my best is over here, then it's on me to behave my best for that day, right? Wherever it lands. So that, remember the continuum as we move through this little lesson. I have one more study that I found that, like, as I turned 50 this year, this study, like, it's so funny. So this study, being impatient or patient, how you handle stress, it's a marker. If you lean towards patience, you're handling stress better. If you lean towards impatient, you aren't really handling and dealing and moving through your stress as well as you probably could be. So, this whole concept of being patient is really a marker for how you're handling stress. That was a huge wake up call for me, right? So, in the National Academy, I think it's actually the Proceedings of the National Academy of Science of the United States of America. I don't know. Whoever made that name has a lot of patience. That's a long name. 2016, they published a study that people who are impatient or lean towards that end of the continuum are actually at a higher risk for heart problems because of its connection to stress on our body. And they actually found out that the impatient behaviors of certain people, not certain people, but the population that they studied, the impatient behaviors were actually linked to shorter um, telomeres, which are a part of your DNA. And it's the part of your DNA that influences the cells that tell uh, our body how to age. It actually is making us age quicker, impatience. Whether it's your internal physical body, like your heart, right? Or even your skin. Being impatient ages us. It speeds up the aging process. If that's not a wake up call, I don't know what is. Let's start practicing patience. And that's what it is, a practice. We have to practice the things we want to become good at. We have to practice it, right? And when we practice patience in a situation, guess what it does? It conserves energy, which allows our body to use energy for maintaining our body's homeostasis, for maintaining health. Doesn't this blow your mind? It makes me want to reverse my life and just become patient and just learn how to be patient. Learning all this actually taught me exactly how impatient I am. Okay. So practice this with me. It is a practice like anything. And the biggest, I'm laughing as I'm doing this episode of Teachings and Tangents because my whole coaching platform is mind, mindfulness, and mindset. And I am good at it. I am a unique and impactful coach. I have clients and evidence to prove this. I have my own growth to prove this, but it's a practice. And I fell out of practice. I fell out of practice thinking that it was enough to set aside time to be mindful, right? So it's been likened to people who, let's say you wake up and you go to the gym and you get, a good 2 mile run in and you lift some weights, and then you go home and sit in front of your desk for 10 hours. And then you get up and have dinner and go to bed, right? You are not as healthy with your whole gym regime, whatever routine, as somebody who is not going to the gym, but moving all day, right? So it's a practice that we need to implement throughout our whole day. And being a member of the Teachings and Tangents community and knowing how I coach, I made us an acronym. Yep, I made us an acronym. So as you practice this, you're going to remember MVP. You, my friend, are the MVP of patience. And here you go. Here are your 3 steps to start practicing. I'm going to be doing this right along with you, so please do this so that I know I'm not alone. And these are the steps that are going to help us to land in the middle of that patience continuum, right? We want to just be in that sweet spot of patience and toggle, right? I'm not saying we can't ever be like this is causing some impatience right now, this daily hassle with my huge jug of water. So you want to remember what Don Miguel Ruiz said, right? Be your best every day and know your best can change. So we want to land somewhere in that middle area. And these are the steps, the MVP acronym that we're going to do to use it. All right. So the M stands for me. We're going to go back to that Teachings and Tangents episode where I taught you how to learn your own language. This is where you're going to get to know yourself better. All right. We're going to identify that inner voice when it starts to get niggly, right when you start to get activated, right? We're going to notice it and address its needs before it starts yelling and we become impatient, right? Begin to recognize when you are starting to feel activated. Get clear on your inner language. Get clear of situations that put you in an impatient mood, right? So if traffic causes you impatience, right? So let's look at how you can create a schedule where you're less likely to fall into a traffic pattern that causes you impatience, right? If you do go to the gym and it's really busy in the morning and not so much at night, and you can swing it and you're not impatient waiting for the machines, let's look at that. Get to know yourself better so that you can avoid being activated or at least start to notice it before. There's a phrase that I love using in my coaching sessions, and it's like, listen to the smoke alarm before the fire alarm, right? So you've got 2 different alarms. You have a smoke alarm and a fire alarm, right? The fire alarm is sensing fire, danger. It's all done. It's over. The smoke alarm is giving you that warning. Listen to the warning signal. So we've got M of our MVP. Our V is visualize. What's the bigger picture here? You're in the moment, you're feeling activated, right? You're going to say to yourself, like, can I think of this with a purpose or a bigger purpose in mind? Like, what's my purpose? Okay, so this might be very useful when you are in of the 3 scenarios, you're actually in those relationships, right? Or even the daily hassles. Like, let's say you're playing a kid with a game. Let's say you're playing a game with a kid and it feels boring, right? You're all you're doing is thinking about the laundry and the dishes, and you're thinking about maybe you have a really good book you want to read, but you're stuck playing this game and you don't really want to be, right? So the bigger picture is, are you able to become a role model? Are you able to teach lessons during this gameplay, like patience, right? Like rule following, like interaction, teamwork, right? What's the bigger picture? Why did you start playing the game to begin with, right? And then what is it about making connections with people? So maybe you're stuck in line at the grocery store. The bigger picture is you are getting groceries to then create this meal that you've been waiting to make. Try this new recipe. What's the bigger picture? That's going to pull you out of that intense moment of starting to feel activated and bring you into a place where you can see a way out of it, right? So we've got the M, me, V, visualize. The P is, I've said it numerous times. Besides patience, the P is practice. And this is where mood, mindset, and mindfulness come in. When you're practicing this, can you find a reframe? Can you put yourself in somebody else's shoes maybe? Like go back to the you're at the grocery store. Maybe it's the cashier's first day. Maybe 3 people before you, they had a horrible person who was yelling at them, right? Can we reframe this? Can we look at it from a different perspective, right? That is part of making a human connection in this human experience. How can you show compassion in a situation, right? Can you be in the present moment? Are we going to practice some mindfulness? So, reframing is our mindset. Mindfulness. Can we be in the present moment? Can we practice some of the skills that we've learned by practicing mindfulness? Can you take and introduce some breath work, some breathing, practice some of your nervous system regulation techniques, practice your mindfulness, right? And then you're going to ask yourself if something needs to be addressed immediately. And this is where if you're feeling impatient, it might be an emergency. It might be something else is more important right now, and you need to figure out how you're going to create a situation that you can leave where you're at, where this impatience is, and get there. Maybe it's a phone call, maybe it's actually removing yourself and saying, "This game has been fun, but I really must do this. Can we put a pin in it and come back?" Right? Whatever that looks like. And for MVP, I am going to leave you with a phrase that I love to say that gives me a license and an opportunity to allow compassion into my life. And that is extra space, extra grace. When we prepave our day, our hours, our weeks with extra space. We're allowing ourselves this extra grace, and sometimes we don't end up in these situations of hassle or feeling frustrated. And now we didn't so much touch on the impatience that comes with hardships because that is another big ball of wax that we can dive into another time. But for today, I am going to leave you with your MVP instructions, and I hope that you enjoy them. Let me know if you have any questions, and I will see you next week on Teachings and Tangents.